I'm Alex Busto. I'm with Nixon Peabody. And as I'm sure you don't want to be hearing from a lawyer this morning, and you'd rather hear from our esteemed panel of investors, I'm going to turn it over for some introductions after I just kind of set the stage for the panel, which is called Overcoming Investment Challenges. But in our discussions, we're really focused on the opportunity, the ability for kind of getting into this space that McKinsey's report just described as a $1 trillion industry by 2040. So super exciting time for women's health and healthcare that has traditionally been viewed as a niche market. And there is a lot of investment and exciting opportunities in this space. So why don't I start with Nirdesh, if you want to introduce yourself, and we'll kind of go down the line.
Absolutely. So I'm Nirdesh Gupta. I'm the managing director for Cedars-Sinai Technology Ventures. Cedars-Sinai Technology Ventures is essentially an evolved tech transfer office, which operates as a comprehensive venture studio. It's more of a operating, venture enterprise. In that setting, I'm responsible for tech transfer, investment into technologies, and developing them to a point where we can, create companies and invest in those companies. I manage an equity portfolio there, and as well, we have a good number of these business units, 5 or 6. These are commercial enterprises in specific domains, and the accelerator program, which is more of also an evolved enterprise as an venture studio in itself. I've been at Cedars for 13 years, and I'm quite fortunate, to be able to build this kind of an enterprise where we have delivered $1.2 billion in return back to the institution at a 51% IRR. And more than that, is really to fulfill our mission and be an enabling entity for the venture and the industry. So good to be here.
And my name's Helen McBride. I'm with Bold Capital Partners. We're a venture capital firm based in Santa Monica, California, so just down the highway from UCLA. So thank you, Dina, for the invitation to drive over today. I love this conference. It's a lot of fun. We're currently deploying out of a third fund, and our focus areas tend to be about 70% in the life sciences and healthcare. That's pretty broadly defined. The rest are things that we also love, like AI and robotics and all kinds of fun things like that. But inside healthcare, we have 3 big pillars, and one of them is in women's health. And the way that we define women's health is not only indications that are only women specific, but ones that are predominantly impacting women. And that can be cardiovascular disease, that can be Alzheimer's disease, but things where women have historically been underaddressed, and whether it's the data or whether it's the ability to address those conditions, in a way for them. A great example is we now have Leqembi, which is a life-changing drug for many. It doesn't work in women. Kind of sucks for me because I'm getting older. So, even something that has a major impact like that as we age, and that's one of our other pillar areas, is keeping us healthy as we age, and then empowering us to be CEO of our own health. So getting data and information that help us, start well, stay well, throughout our lifetime. It's really unfortunate. We have all these great drugs that are now coming to bear, and American women. So that's why we care deeply about that space. We're also very focused on representation. So about a quarter of our CEOs also happen to be women. And we think they, as the data have shown in the past, produce outsized returns. And that's what we're all about. So very happy to be here and to contribute to the conversation.
Hi, it's nice to meet everyone. I'm Naseem, one of 3 general partners at a fund called Emmeline Ventures. We're also based here in LA. We invest across women's health, financial services, and sustainability, specifically in tech and solutions that are helping women live and thrive. Because when we do that, if we help women live and thrive, their families, their communities also live and thrive. And 85 to 90% of household spend is sitting in women's hands. And so if we can otherwise put more products, services, tech in front of her that's built by her, for her, with her needs in mind, she's going to spend more of that money. We're looking at opening up $30 trillion of capital if we can put more things in front of her that actually speak to her. So that is what we're after. We are in the midst of closing our current fundraise by the end of April. We have 23 companies in the portfolio between the previous fund and the current. and we're running. The other thing I'll say is I wish all of those men hadn't got up and left the room for this conversation. Because this is not a women talking to women conversation. We need everybody involved. And I saw like 20 get up and leave. So if they were a friend of yours, text them and tell them to come back. Because this matters to everybody. I know it doesn't sound like it, but it does. So I'm glad to be here.
That $1 trillion economy will make the men to stay here also.
That $1 trillion.
I'm Shashi Tripathi. Thank you, Gina, for having me here. Super excited to be here. My name is Shashi Tripathi. It took me 3 hours to drive this morning, by the way, from Orange County to here. A lot of fun. But again, happy to be here. I have an interesting background. All my life, I have been actually in healthcare and life sciences. In healthcare, I worked, if you look into the healthcare, the 4 legs, which is the provider and hospital side. So I worked into the provider hospital side. Also the health plan. So people in the organizations who are paying for the healthcare. And then the life sciences. Within life sciences, I worked in the med device and pharma. And then, of course, the patient itself. There I founded 3 companies. One failed, learned a lot from the failed one. But 2 had really good successful exits. One being used by roughly 20 million US patients today. And other is remote patient monitoring for patient with the pacemaker and ICD implanted. Pretty much all the cardiologists and electrophysiologists in the world, they're using that product today. We had 2 hats today, Chief Operating Officer with a company called Impedimed. We have a device which basically detects lymphedema for breast cancer patient. And also I started my investment firm, Nurture Ventures, in 2019. And there I have 3 instrument types. I have 2 SPV and 1 fund. The SPV has around $6 million asset under management, and the fund has $5 million. Between the 3, we have deployed the fund in 32 companies. We invest in the area of AI, SaaS, digital health, and fintech. We do place quite a bit of importance on the women health. Many of our women health portfolios are doing really well. It goes back to that $1 trillion economy. And out of those 32, we got an exit from a company called Carbon Card, which gave us 7 times return in 11 months. Unheard of. Our IRR is pretty high, 94. None of the 32 has failed as of now in the 4 years. So call it luck. We have been doing good. Looking forward to this presentation today.
All right, thank you. So we have people here who really know what they're doing and really know what they're talking about and investing in women's health. I want to kind of start off and set the stage with what's exciting to each of you about this particular market, kind of understanding that, as I mentioned before, it's been viewed as niche. There are certain, I think sometimes it's oversimplified as sexual reproductive health. What areas do you see gaps in, or what are you excited about? What are your 23 companies addressing, and what are you looking for when you're making the investment? Helen?
So for me, it's really about, starting with that problem. So what is the problem you're trying to solve, and how big is that problem? And when you think about women's health, which has historically not been well addressed, there are just more opportunities there. And so I always say start with the problem. So we are a tech-first investment firm. Don't get me wrong. We love technology. We love when disciplines come together. I'm a biophysicist by training. We have bioengineers. We have straight-up physicists and computer scientists. But when things come together and disciplines intersect, that's where we find things to get really interesting. So I would say start with the problem. Look around. Be open to the problems. It doesn't have to be just in reproductive health for women, although that is an area that is very important. It can also be issues that are still there in cardiovascular disease, for example. What about metabolic disease? Everybody's running like crazy towards these metabolic conditions. What about PCOS? PCOS is a women-specific metabolic syndrome condition. I don't see a lot of people fishing over there, and yet it's a huge problem and market as a result of that. And the lessons that we've learned from treating metabolic disease for everyone could be used to target that specific indication and have a fairly large green space. So things like that, where I feel like, you can take something, look at it and say, yeah, but what's the problem that's still there? where can I plow that space open, get to some green space, and take my technology and do something tremendously impactful that also has the potential to create outsized returns?
I think for us, let me just lay down the parameters within which sort of we operate. It's a little bit more specialized. So at first, we do everything that we invest in is patient centric. So we don't do any direct to consumer type of products and solutions and investment. And given a sort of a large medical center and an academic medical center, expectation often from us is to really go in and be a partner for something that's an average industry, and the investors will be risk averse. It's often the first in class, best in class solutions where there isn't solutions where there is a very high mortality and morbidity, those type of thing. Most of our investments are early stage. They are gap funding, pre-seed, seed, Series A. And the role in that, in that space that is expected out of the industry and the investor community expect from us is to really take the ideas that make sense as a product and solution, de-risk them to a point where they become investable for the industry and the investment community. So within the domain, the areas that we have identified in the women's health is preeclampsia. So if we look at preeclampsia, it's one of the leading cause for mortality among the pregnant women, globally and including in the U.S. And if you just go within preeclampsia, the disparity just among the the Native American and the Black population is 2 to 3x more mortality. So we have been working in that area tremendously for 5-6 years, and it's actually going to submit a de novo diagnostic solution at the end of this year. Then the other is endometriosis area that we have just started to do work. And the last 7 years, PCOS is a 65 million women, 10% of the population, woman population has PCOS. That's 6.5 million women in the U.S. And there is no drug approved out there for PCOS, so that's an area. And then on more of the digital side, we have like mental health is an area of focus. Digital health solution for maternal health and patient support type of a domain where we have made some investment, and those are the 4 or 5 areas where we are actively working on.
And can I add that for preeclampsia, a woman who develops preeclampsia is 5 times more likely to have an additional cardiovascular event in her lifetime. So it's not just, it is to create a healthier mom, a healthier baby, but also for that woman's health throughout the rest of her life and through the value chain. It has an outsized impact on health through her lifetime. So things like that, they sound like reproduction. They go beyond that because we are a whole person in our health.
It's generational health, right? Because those situations land right in the mitochondria of that child because they get all their mitochondria from their mother. And so we're taking care of everybody when we take care of those things.
Yeah, in that space, just we won't go into the nitty-gritty of preeclampsia, but if you look at it, there isn't a drug. There are solutions being developed, but at least I can see anything in the next 4 or 5 years. There is a lot of investment and effort going in that space. So right now, what you can do is only utilize the diagnostic solution. There isn't a diagnostic approved. There is just one that got approved by Thermo Fisher last year, but that solution is only available and accessible in a very specialized places like Cedars-Sinai. We get samples from Chicago to Cedars-Sinai for that particular test. Versus most of your mortality is in the rural setting, in the community hospital. So you really need low cost, affordable, accessible, and a solution that actually gives you just in time a product that can be used to triage the care for the woman, and then that can make a big difference. And that's something is what we have seen and been trying to develop, working closely with FDA.
So exciting about the category. There's a lot of things. I'll give you a few. So we're at a turning point right now on demand and what women are looking for when they go to their primary care providers or to their OB or whoever they're talking to. Because I will tell you, my very South Asian mom will not say the word menopause out loud, right? Scares the bejesus out of her. She won't say it. But her daughters are saying it. My 5-year-old says it, right? And so we're in a place where like women are taking more ownership of their healthcare. They're understanding more closely where the gaps are. We're asking better questions. We're asking our girlfriends for insight in addition to what we're getting from our PCPs. And we're realizing that the gap in basic science is severe. And it's not that we're being gaslit all over town. We are, but 50% of the time, the system doesn't know it's doing it, right? The data just doesn't exist. It's not taught in medical schools. It's not something that's been researched. Clinical trials haven't covered it. And so much of clinical trials, there's maybe 14% of clinical trials actually cover women's health. The majority of that covers fertility. So we're not thinking about adolescence. We're not researching menopause. We're not researching all the outcomes of estrogen declining and ovarian failure. Like, we're not just researching those things. And women have finally realized that we need to ask more questions and actually demand better care. And that's a moment for the category, because it's not that $1 trillion in value comes from nowhere. It's because there's spend sitting behind the things that we want support for, and we're willing to pay for it. And so I think now we're all catching up to that mentality. And when it comes to demand shifting and behavior shifting, if you think about where the market was when Google, Facebook, Amazon were first fundraising, right, as small venture-backed companies, there were no exits for search or e-commerce or social networks when those big checks got put into those companies. But we saw a behavior and we saw a trend, and that's what we invested in. And that's the moment we're at with women's health right now, which is really exciting.
So, I mean, the keynote earlier today was talking about if we are more inclusive in society, we are bound to make money. And this report, which we are talking about, keep referring to, created by World Economic Forum and McKinsey together, by the way. And in there, I was reading this article. It says, despite living longer than men, women spend 25% more of their lives in poor health. Think about it for that moment. 25% of their lives, in spite of living more. And we have a $1 trillion economy if we address the women. So I urge all the VC around the world to look your portfolio and go into the women health, because there's a demand. And by the way, not just the demand, but also you're doing a favor to community and society. And by uplifting that 25% poor health, we are also increasing collectively as a society, hire a stronger workforce into the economy. So those who think that by investing into women health and women-led companies, it's not a good investable opportunity, read that report, by the way. And so part of our portfolio, I often talk about, look for the investable companies. And then now I have an urge to those who are founding companies in the women health. Go for your basics. And by the way, if you have your basics right, which is product market fit, your financials are right, your revenue generating, your expense management is on the right track, believe me, you will get the investment. So that's how we see it in our portfolio. I'm not so much particularly going after women health, but if I find something women health, which is a really good investable opportunity, why not? I mean, I think Naseem and I share a portfolio company. I'll give an example, Luna Joy, and founded by two women doctors. And they found a really unique use case for women mental health. And their marketing pitch is that we will take care of your mental health for women right from adolescence, marriage, pregnancy, postpartum, menopause, end of life. And they are doing wonderful, by the way. Just in less than 2 years, they are $2.5 million ARR. Y Combinator just 2 months back invested $4 million. Think about it, $4 million at $40 million valuation for 2.5 million ARR company. I mean, some of those VC who are sitting in the room will think, my God, that's the kind of multiplier you're getting. And that's women health, all women mental health, led by two women doctors. So that's my message from both sides, VC as well as entrepreneur. If the basics of the companies are right, you will grow, you will get investments.
So I think that's a really important point that you made about women. So women founders and women operators in this space as well. I think sometimes we see a huge overlap in that and kind of automatically associate women's health with women's founders, and only women's founders can be doing this, which isn't the case. And I think, Naseem, you have an important perspective on this of, what is a lived experience, and how can companies that are operating in this space, whether or not women-led or founded, can present their business case and argument for investment?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do a lot of coaching with female founders, and it's a bit of it's a lived experience. It's conditioning coming from the outside world. It's what marketing tells us we're good and bad at. And so for founders who are coming into a highly male-dominated space, when it's in venture or they're pitching to male VCs, there's behaviors in there that we're not always ready for, right? And so women often get asked more prevention questions, less promotion questions. There's a lot more risk management in pitch meetings than there is vision and excitement. And so what we do with founders, what we coach all founders to do, is to really think about vision and opportunity. I don't yet need, in 2 minutes in, I don't need to worry about whether your math is perfect. What I need to understand is, what role is your business going to play in 5 years, in 8 years, in 10 years? What influence is it going to have? Where is it going to sit in the ecosystem? Who is it going to help? How is it going to help them? And how are you going to make money? Those are the things I want to hear in the first 5 to 7 minutes, right? And then take me down to where you're thinking about speed bumps, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of female founders will start with the caveats, and they won't start with the vision. And so we very deliberately coach and train and ask them to come with vision. And then what we're also doing is helping them, I think, transitioning prevention questions into promotion questions is also something that needs rehearsal and practice. And so if there are other VCs in the room and you're meeting female founders, just keep these things in mind, that this is a lot of kind of what has happened to people before is what they walk into the room expecting to have happen. And really be thoughtful about the kinds of questions you're asking founders that are in the women's health space or even in other sectors. Because we have fintech and climate in our portfolio, and it's all female founders as well. So they're building everywhere, right? It's every part of everyone's lived experience to be in all of these categories. They aren't only in women's health, but they're everywhere. And so we want to make sure that we shouldn't be the only funding female founders because we happen to be women. Everyone should be driving money towards these founders, but it takes some understanding and awareness of the kind of experience that happens in the room with these pitch meetings.
I think that's super critical to understand. And Helen, I think your fund also takes this problem solving approach if there's a problem and no solution, and looking at companies that address problems that haven't been solved. Can you talk a little more about the bold approach to investment, and I guess how you view women's health in the context of healthcare generally?
Yeah. So, our approach is to start with the technology first and how it's going to disrupt something that's a very big market, right? So how is it going to get to that product market fit? How is it going to get to that place where we see an outsized return? To Naseem's point, it is interesting. We see a lot of founders, come and pitch, quite diverse. And you can tell people that have had some bad experiences. Yeah. When they come into the pitch, because they're very much prepared to address all of your concerns. And we push everyone, all of the founders that come to pitch. It's like, no, just tell me the vision. Tell me what's underlying it. Why do you care about this problem? How big is this problem? How are you going to solve it? How are you going to get there? And then we can talk about the rest later. So we do also, have that feedback. But honestly, we don't care we care about somebody who can get the job done. We don't care about anything else. We are financially driven investors. We care about delivering results and returns. And whoever's standing in front of me who can get that job done, then that's the person that I want to write the check to. Because you do write a check to a person. You don't write it to a company or an idea, because you're counting on that person who's in front of you to deliver. And if you feel like they can get the job done, then that's what we see. For women's health, it is broad. It is broad for us. So we recently had someone come and pitch for a neurotech solution for Alzheimer's disease. And what do you know? It affects, it has a positive efficacy signal and no increased safety signals, regardless of sex. So we were very happy about that, not only because it sounds like a great solution, as we dig in and we learn more with their data, but it's also that the things that are there that I mentioned before don't impact women. So then you basically have this whole green space where you're like, well, we're the only ones probably that'll come to market first that can help women, which are, more than 50% of Alzheimer's patients. So things like that we're really looking for in the cardiovascular space, where there's a higher stroke risk for women versus heart disease. People still don't know why. But it is nonetheless true. So if there's something that we can do that's in that space that's not being addressed today, then that's where we see that opportunity. But really, it's just we want to see somebody who shows up. And I think the point about bias, we all have bias, right? And one of the things about VCs, about 40% of our investment team at Bold are women. And, so when you're looking to make that connection with a founder, you're looking for someone who often looks like you or has a shared experience. I'm a PhD by training, so I like to geek out with the other PhDs, talk about technology. So, you're kind of driven by that, but that's also why you have to work very hard and go through anti-bias training, make sure that you're not missing out on opportunities because of what's in your head, right? So, and that's a conscious decision you have to make when you show up, and our whole team is committed to that. And I think it does make us more open to some opportunities that perhaps others might let go to the wayside.
So maybe from there, I'll open it up to the four of you. This concept of shared network and lived experience, shared experience, what advice or what do you think other VCs and investors should be thinking about in expanding their network and addressing this space? Because I think to your point, we're limited by our network, and sometimes we are giving opportunities to people who look like us or something that we can relate to more often. So I guess maybe from both, if founders and VCs or investors, what's the solution?
I'll start. I think asking questions is a big one, and joining events that may not look like it's an event you should be at. And I said it earlier, but again, for 20 men to get up and leave the room because this is a women's healthcare conversation, that's a problem, right? And this happens a lot. I did an event in New York last year during Tech Week. It was a women's health future roundtable. We had 150 people in the room. There were 2 men. Literally, I called them out. I gave them a shout out. It was amazing. But it shouldn't be like, if it had been a future of healthcare conversation, it probably would have been 50-50. But because it said women's health, it was all women in the room, and we cannot solve for our health by ourselves. It also doesn't just affect us, it affects everybody. And so we're going to get more creative with how we label things, right? And we're just going to not say women's health, and we'll still talk about women's health the whole time. But we need more diversity to be in the room when we talk about things. And so finding events that are atypical, asking more questions, not waiting till the pitch to figure out whether something like pelvic floor matters, because we do hear weird stories about, let me ask the secretary, let me ask my wife, let me go find out what my daughter thinks. Those things still happen. And it shouldn't happen, right? We should all be reading up on things that we're unfamiliar with and then be taking meetings with some education. So that my ask is to ask questions and to join rooms that you think are not for you, but still to join them anyway.
I think from my perspective, if we look into even today, in the world of VC, you're talking 2 men. But if you look in the US VC market, I think it's less than 10% women are VC. And we were talking about, we have this perceived notion that we connect to ourselves more. So the other thing we need to do is we need to encourage more and more women to be VC, so they can connect to the women. So that's one side, I would say. Second, I would say those who are existing VC fund, look deeply into the market. There's money to be made. Why VC exists at the very high level to make money, am I right? And there's money there. We are talking $1 trillion right there. So that's the second thing I would say to the VC side. On the entrepreneur side, healthcare in general is hard to make money by the, because we have so many regulations. If we go into med devices and pharma, you have to do the clinical trial. There's no way out. You have to find the reimbursement. There's no way out. You have to do FDA clearance. There's no way out. And all these things require money. So it's very hard. What I would suggest is be resourceful. Don't give up. As we were talking about, think ahead about the vision and think for the TAM, total addressable market. And if your TAM is high, you can work in the beginning hard work. And by the way, our US government has so many amenities. Some of us, we don't know. I mean, SBA, I'm sure many of you know SBA. SBA has a local chapters, okay? And they, at least 10 years back, I don't know how much now, they used to offer $5 training, full day in person about sales, marketing, finance, HR. Access those resources. I'm sure it's not $5, maybe $15 or $10 right now. Access those resources. Many of the grants are available. NIH, some of you, I'm sure many of you know, National Institute of Health, they give a lot, billions plus dollar grants on healthcare. Why not women healthcare? NSC, many of the state has grants. Many of the communities like Cedars-Sinai, they have more focus on to the community-based grants. So access those resources where you can have non-diluted funding. And as I said earlier, if your basics of your business is right, believe me, you will get money later also. So those are some of the guidance thoughts I have about how to raise this awareness and raise this business in women health.
I think I'll just point something very interesting. So I always worked and operated in the health system environment, and been doing investments and building companies and managing the portfolio of companies. In my setting, we get like a lot of these trainings from the HR, and they are on the topics of the DEIs, the diversity, inclusion, the sexual harassment, and many things, compliance and healthcare safety and all that. And I think there is a lot of learning in those, the training, and when you bring it to practice in these, let's say, our accelerator, setting where we build our cohort, keeping, all of these sort of the biases out and being inclusive. And then actually, when we implement $100,000, it creates $1 million of an enterprise value, right? And if you look at it overall as a cohort, it's been like this year we'll have our 10th cohort, so 9 classes, 90 companies. It's pretty, statistically significant sort of a cohort. And the net outcome is very positive in terms of dealing and addressing with a lot of this. And then I think so that there is a role of these medical centers and the universities and academic other type of institutions in this environment to be able to really address these. And as you said, if you really focus on the inclusiveness and community, and really practice on removing these biases and break them, that the net outcome is very, very positive and very, very promising.
I'd say that VC is not exempt from the basics. Okay, so we know from a lot of data, I came from a background in corporate for many years, that you get better decision making when you have diversity of thought around the table. People have different experiences, they have different viewpoints, it leads to better outcomes. Why? Because you don't all think the same and agree with each other all the time. And so you're not chasing the same deals, you're not chasing the same opportunities. You're able to spot what is something that's differentiated and that has the potential for an outsized return. So to VCs, I would say, make sure that you have diversity there. What's the big ladder break, just like there is in corporate? It's to get to the partner level. So we have lots of associates. We have at least more associates in VC, okay, at the bottom rung, but they don't move up. Right. So we can't, and it's the same problem again in any place. It can't be that the women partners are pulling everybody up behind them. It's going to take forever. Right. So it has to be a solution that everyone participates in, but it's not just out of your sense of justice, which I think is important. But even if you just care about the bottom line, that serves that purpose. You will have better outcomes if you have more diversity on your team. Okay. So, on the founder side, well, what do you do? Again, you start with that problem. Make sure that you've got a market and a problem that is really big. Do your homework. Take advantage of all the opportunities. You can go to an accelerator. You can go to SBA. You can learn about all these things that you don't know about. You can network with other CEOs and other founders in the space. You can really start to build an evidence package that supports that what you're saying is important, and that, by the way, your technology, whatever it is a solution that's really going to win in this market, and why. And the more compelling you are for that first meeting, the more likely you are to get the second meeting. But also do your homework on the VCs. I would say there's so many of us, right? So do your homework on us. Which ones are more likely? Just because we invest in something in the past doesn't mean we're going to do it again. However, if you talk to our CEOs, if you get to know kind of like, hey, so do you like your investors? Make your list of people that are more likely that you want to work with too, because it has to be a two-way relationship. It's a bit like a marriage. You're going to be together for a long time, and if you can't see working with that person long term, then you probably don't want them as your investor either. So do your homework. Make sure that at least those folks you're pitching to are ones that, even if they wrote you the check, you'd want the money from. And then who gives you more than a check? So make sure that there's also that. And even if you don't think that there's something there, you might want to take the meeting anyway. Pull threads, ask them questions, get them to tell you information. They'll probably feel bad by telling you no, and they'll probably tell you more than they should. So, get a little bit on your side when you go through there, and then use it in the next pitch and kind of build up.
One thing I'll say that I think having event like this also very important to all of us, because we play a role into our community. I'm sure when UCLA was putting this event, I'm sure they thought through it about identifying this topic. So it's a responsibility on each one of us to encourage wherever we are in our community, in our society, at VC, at the company, wherever we are. If we all encourage this topic, where there's a money into it and we are making a societal impact, why not do this? So I'm encouraging each one of us to do more in this area. And kudos to UCLA for even doing this event. So thank you, UCLA MedTech.
So Nirdesh, you've been instrumental in bringing a lot of startups and founders to fruition through your work with Cedars Accelerator. I'm curious, we've heard a lot about challenges and gaps in this space as well as opportunities. How do you see companies or what makes a company effective in demonstrating that they can navigate not only hurdles in this particular market, but in healthcare in general? Because I think as we talked about, there's legal challenges, there's regulatory issues, there's marketing, there's all of these considerations, reimbursement issues. How do we actually get paid for these companies' services? What do you see as a successful company?
I think it's one thing, because these companies typically come in at an early stage. They have some sort of a product prototype and an idea about that is relevant in the the healthcare setting, and that's the reason they come to us. And we have an application process and a selection process through which we engage a lot of stakeholders in the process. There is a lot of attrition happens just because something is not fit. So the ones that come to our program are there's a good amount of vetting that takes place before. And I think after, if you look at who really performs and do well, is one thing for sure, the founders and the team, and the founders sometimes their motivation is just for some personal reason, or their motivation is just because their experience. Serial entrepreneurs sometimes there is a lot of different reasons that goes into for that founders to be choosing a particular statement. That's very, very important. The next thing is, it's the product market fit. You can be an amazing founder, you have an amazing story, you have an amazing pitch, but I think if you don't have a product market fit, and if that product market fit can't really sustain in the actual live healthcare environment setting, where you're working with all the different diverse stakeholders that you need to work with, right there is your petri dish, where you can generate the data and evidence and experience and the adoption metrics and everything. So that's something is very, very relevant. How competent the team is to really be able to either fail and then go back up to then recreate the product and the value proposition that they want to, or pivot into something more relevant. I think that. The other thing I've seen is because a lot of time, the founders and team, they come from different domains. They may not be the expert on that particular product solution that they're building. So how effective they are in really engaging their stakeholders and identifying their stakeholders, those. So at an early stage, it's the less of a function of money. It's more of like, if you have that, the right strategic sort of the cap table and the stakeholders and the collaborator. And if there is a team that can take advantage of it, then those teams I have seen, them do relatively really, really well.
And Shashi, you've talked a lot about stakeholders and getting buy-in for investments. How do you view that? How do you go about doing that?
I mean, when you are starting a company, I often keep using the word basics of the company. And basics of company, if that is right, you will get the investment. And those, as Nirdesh is talking about, product market fit, your financials, your sales and marketing strategy, your expenses, your revenue. I often, when I look into a pitch deck, and we invest, by the way, at early stage revenue generating company. So I often look for I always ask, give me your trailing 12 month of revenue. And if MRR is growing, that's generally speaking a good company to invest. It's a good sign. And the higher the growth is, the higher chances of getting the investment into the company. So coming back to your question, build the basics. And depending on the stage of the company, by the way, so let's say you're starting very early on, you have no revenue. To same point, look for the VCs and the angels who are investing into early stage without revenue. Don't go to VCs who are investing only in revenue. I would not even touch a pitch deck which does not have revenue. I would not. So why waste time? Go only where the VCs who are investing into pre-revenue company. There's so many accelerator programs, especially most large university, Berkeley, Harvard, UCLA, UCI, Cedars-Sinai, they all have accelerator program. Apply there because even Tech Coast, Y Combinator, apply there, get that initial funding, get the revenue, and then after you'll find many VCs who are willing to give you money. Again, I'll come back to the same, if your basics of the companies are right. So that's how I would go about building my stages. And as you grow, and as you identify the VC, let's say you're doing seed stage and now you're going to Series A, you will find the investor, you will find the community, you'll find the team within you, part of your team, who are helping you, as long as you're willing to listen. I have seen founders who has, in their journey, pivoted their product even, because they found someone who told that person that, hey, what you're doing today may not be good, but change it, make a tweak. And they tweaked and it's working really nicely. So as you go in Series A and Series B and C, you will find people who are willing to help as long as you're willing to listen. So be receptive about people you're choosing to listen and include those ideas as you're growing further into your company growth. Those are the ways I would go about, Alex.
That's perfect, because my next question, we only have a few minutes left, is what advice would you want to leave the room with, or any final thoughts about this space, which I would say women's healthcare is healthcare, and back to basics maybe is Shashi's. Anyone?
Get involved in the space, ask some questions. If you're not an investor in early stage companies yet, find some that you like, write some checks, meet some funds. The more capital we can get to this space, the better. It is a huge arbitrage opportunity. There is a ton of money to be made, but we need more people coming to it with capital. And individual investors, family offices, like that's the best money to put into this category right now, because your multiple is going to be significant on those checks. So I would say if you aren't writing checks yet, write some checks. We are fundraising, we can talk. And also ask the questions, right? Meet the founders, ask them what they're working on, ask them what they need. Because related on the basics, there's a lot of tech knowledge in healthcare that doesn't have a clinical background, that doesn't understand the FDA, that hasn't navigated payer provider. And so bringing that expertise to what the tech brain already knows how to do is tremendous. And so we always are looking for where the healthcare expertise is on a founding team, if it's not on the founders of themselves. And rooms like this can help do that, because you have a lot of that expertise and a lot of those founders are looking for it.
My only advice to the founders are, once you find the product market fit, let's say you identified, this is the area I want to go, and I can see the business, I can see the financials, don't give up. Because early on, you will hear many no's. When I founded my first company, I must have pitched at least 100. And 95 of them said, you're crazy, don't do this will not work. All kinds of advice which I had to listen and accept. Finally, one guy gave me money. And here is the history. In 3 years, I sold my company. So don't give up. If 95 people are telling you no, once you've identified your product market fit, once you see there's a potential financially, do not give up. If 95% people are telling no, go to the 96 one. They might give you the money to grow. That's the only advice I will give it to the founders.
All right, Helen and Nirdesh, you're going to have to keep your secrets, and we're getting kicked off. But thank you all for staying for our women's healthcare presentation and panel, and thank you to each of you for your insights.